A received wisdom seems to be that Humza Yousaf, the First Minister of Scotland, leader of the SNP, is to resign as Scotland's First Minister later today. I mean, listen, I am very much, what did Eric Cantona say? I'm a seagull, not a trawler today. It's very much the case that I'm just following the lead of Sky News, the BBC. You heard from Gina Davidson, our Scottish editor. I can't quite imagine that they've all got this wrong and that everything's going to go back to normal before close of play today. I hear we may be looking at an announcement at around 12 noon. Now, there are a couple of things that occurred to me early doors this morning. The first of which is how important it is for me not to sound like I'm reporting on the political situation in a foreign country. I can see why, more clearly than I ever would have done if I hadn't got this job and done this job for the last 20 years. I can see why so many people in Scotland feel as if they are routinely treated from London like second-class citizens, not just in the context of politics itself and the sort of Westminster heavy-handedness, but also in the context of London-based media reporting. So I do be on your guard for that if I need a quick steer, because I'm fairly confident that we would be having or asking the question that I'm about to ask if the programme was being presented from Glasgow or Edinburgh. If this was a Scottish-based radio station, I think I would still be asking the question that I'm asking. This isn't, I was getting my self-defence in early, but I have found myself recently increasingly drawn to the question of what the hell has happened to the Tory party. So I'm not on the outside looking in, as it were, when it comes to questions of what on earth has happened to the SNP. It's a conversation coming from within the story, not without. But here we are. If I were to start in 2016, when, of course, Scotland voted to remain in the United Kingdom and in the European Union, and the decision to depart left, any sense that you were not masters and mistresses of your own destiny, almost impossible to refute. I thought, and so did many people contacting the programme, that the independence cause would receive an enormous fillip, that the SNP, as their raison d'etre being Scottish independence, essentially, would be a huge beneficiary of being dragged out, of Scotland being dragged out of the European Union against its will. And I wouldn't say that the opposite seems to have happened, but it's certainly the case, isn't it, that has not come to pass. I'm not, the one bit where I will plead Anglo-centricism or London-centricism is on the differences between English law and Scottish law. So charges have been brought against the former First Minister's husband, and that is about as far as I am prepared to go in the context of having any contribution to the conversation from that angle. But I interviewed Humza Yousaf about a month ago. Can we check when it was? Was it about 6 weeks ago? If that, it feels really recent. I'd say it was in the last 5 full disclosures. I sat down with him and he struck me very much. I spent an hour with him. It was a proper interview. And he struck me very much as a man on a mission. I came out of that, and this may well be a mark of my incompetence as an interviewer and a political analyst as much as anything else, but I came out of that interview believing that he believed that he was in with a very strong chance of leading an independent Scotland. I mean, it is the reason why you join the SNP. It's the reason why you want to become leader. I think Nicola Sturgeon believed for some time that she was. I think Alex Salmond believed that he might lead an independent Scotland. I think Nicola Sturgeon believed that she might lead an independent Scotland. And I came out of that interview with Humza Yousaf genuinely wondering whether or not I'd just spent an hour with a chap who would be or could be the first leader in a few hundred years of an independent Scotland. And now, in the space of a month and a half, we find ourselves contemplating his departure from the top job. So, what's happened? 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. Dougie points out that if you were broadcasting from Glasgow, James, you would have just said out with, not without. So little nuances like that notwithstanding, I want you to talk me through what has happened. How has Scottish politics gone in the space of a few weeks from relative calm to complete turmoil, complete chaos? 8 minutes after 10 is the time, and the phone lines are open. 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. So the first question, really, there's two confidence votes this week, one in him personally, the other in his government. I think that the Clever Money Now this morning says that is not going to happen. Neither of those votes are going to unfold because he is going to hit the high road before the ballots even open. He's written to Scotland's opposition parties, asking them to find common ground ahead of the votes. That doesn't seem to have gone well. And this is now me speculating from the position of observer. The epic miscalculation, I would say, on this electoral pact with the Greens seems to have taken him by surprise. That's the bit I can't quite get my head around. How could a supposedly astute, a historically astute political operator have got something so very badly wrong? Now, I know some of the backdrop. The Greens were making noises themselves about possibly calling time upon the coalition. And he essentially gave them their sandwiches wrapped in a roadmap before. He dumped them before they could dump him, if you want to bring it down to sort of teenage romance type analogies. But it appears to have precipitated the collapse of his entire government, which presumably means that he made a mistake in the way he dealt with the Greens before he even turned his attention to the single member of the Scottish Parliament from the Alba Party, Ash Regan, who I read this morning. I saw one description of her as having only joined the Alba Party because she hates Humza Yousaf so much. So, I mean, the descent from relative calm to relative chaos seems to me to be pretty remarkable. And I want you to talk me through exactly what has happened. And there won't be one answer to this question, will there? There'll be a bunch of answers to this question. But I want to hear yours. I want you to tell me, as someone who is more heavily invested in Scottish politics than I am, and that's inevitable, I think, because I don't live there and you do. As someone who is more heavily invested in Scottish politics than I am, I want you to tell me what has happened. And I mean, I don't know whether you want to take the Scotland referendum, the independence referendum as a starting point, whether you want to take the EU referendum, the Brexit referendum as a starting point, or whether you just want to take my full disclosure interview with Humza Yousaf as a starting point, where everything seemed to me to suggest that here was a fella in it for the long haul who genuinely believed that his political destiny was to lead an independent Scotland. And now he's not even going to be leading the SNP by close of play today, or he's certainly not going to be leading the Scottish government. All main Scottish parties have now said they'll vote against him. So the confidence vote is pretty much a foregone conclusion. And I just want to try to work my way through what has happened and, crucially, of course, why. Let's start with Ian. Morning, James. I'm an SNP voter, and until we gain independence, I will vote for them. If it's ever achieved, I will then vote for the Greens. The SNP is the only party with any heft that has an indie Scot at the forefront of its manifesto, and it wins every time. I hope for another election before the general election so I can vote for them again. People keep forgetting about our proportional system up here and how it's meant to be run with minority governments and confidence deals. I mean, that's great. It doesn't answer any of my questions about what has happened in the last few weeks. What would you pick as your highlight? Would it be the tents on Nicola Sturgeon's lawn? Again, I'm not going any further down that particular avenue because I'm fairly confident on contempt and libel laws in England under English law, but I'm not confident of my understanding of them under Scottish law. And yet, the milestones on the path to this morning's apparent chaos are legion, aren't they? So there it is. 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. The question is pretty straightforward. As somebody who is more heavily invested in Scottish politics than I am, what the hell has happened? What on earth is happening? Why has it happened? And I mean, I don't want to seem vain, but how wrong was I a month and a half ago when I sat there thinking that Humza Yousaf was in it for the long haul and possibly had a date with destiny. Tony's in Greenock to kick things off. I'm breaking the habit of a lifetime, taking a call before the first break, but it's an indication of this being one of those mornings where the callers will generally know a little bit more, or indeed a hell of a lot more, about the subject under discussion than I do. Tony, what would you like to say?
Hi, James.
Hello,
thanks for taking the call. I'm an SNP voter, have been for a long time. Where I think the SNP are falling down is that in the basic things that they need to do as a government in Scotland, they're not doing them. You look at education, the educational standards are falling. You talk to any teacher in Scotland, the standard of education is falling. We were once at the top of all the league tables, but we're now falling down. There's a number of issues around which there's controversy, the ferries. I don't think it helped that when they got into bed with the Greens, that some of the policies that were put forward as green policies, likes of the recycling scheme, the gender recognition, for all the controversy that was, they were they may have been the best intentions, but they weren't executed very well. So it just gives you this impression that for all that they want independence, and a lot of people, I think, still want independence, and they are, as Ian said in your earlier message, they're the only party of any consequence who still carry that message at the forefront of what they want. So these people who want independence are drawn to the National Party.
You've got no choice. If you prioritise that under your personal politics, then you have no choice but to vote for them. If that's the single most important issue for you as a Scottish voter, then there's only one place. There's only one. Go on.
Sorry. I think it's a longer term play. You get independence, then you look at who the best party are to take things forward. Now, again, Ian kind of stole my thunder a wee bit there. I probably would not vote SNP if there was an independent Scotland, because I don't think the SNP are equipped to do it. This is the most.
I think this is the most overlooked element for an awful lot of English, Welsh, Northern, non-Scottish observers who think that they're quite clued up about politics. The idea that a vote for the SNP is a vote based on the idea that they will provide the best government of Scotland is simply not the case, is it? No. I mean, it will be for some people.
And it's proven to be that, to be honest.
And that is the problem that you highlight, actually. The problem you highlight is that they're not very good at governing. In your view.
They haven't been.
Yes.
They haven't got the best record. I don't think the talent pool is very deep. I
was impressed by Humza Yousaf. I really liked him as well.
He seems a very affable guy. He seems a very nice guy. I think circumstances have caught up with him in terms of it's 15, 16, 17 years that the SNP have been in charge.
Yeah.
And it's got the sort of last days of the Reich type thing. Everything's just dying away.
Why? Why him? I mean, are you surprised at the speed with which it's all fallen apart since he became leader?
I think the whole thing with the Greens, they were basically holding up the SNP in Parliament.
Which makes the decision to walk away from them harder to understand, not easier.
I think it seems to have been a rash decision, but it all seems to have been prompted by this decision to
scrap the 2030 climate targets, and that probably made the Greens' position unsustainable. But I don't know whether there's a sort of, I don't want to say petulance, that's probably unkind, but whether the way in which so everybody probably accepted an inevitable schism, but the way in which Yousaf enacted the schism has managed to really upset the Greens much more than would have happened in the event of them making their own way out of the pact and I don't know, introducing a more peaceful schism, if that makes sense. 10:17 is the time. Phone lines are open. 03456060973. I don't know. I mean, already complaints about the reference, Tony's very passing reference to ferries. Suggesting that wasn't the case. I don't think that gender recognition lands with voters. Well, the polls tell us it doesn't land with voters in anything like the way that it lands with the media or with people heavily invested in those issues. So the question on what on earth has happened to Scottish politics remains largely unanswered, although inevitably, and I don't say this for any reason other than illumination, inevitably, I've got 3 people in my inbox now accusing Tony of not having been an SNP voter at all. So if you like me, observe Scottish politics rather than participate in Scottish politics, you would be a little bit surprised by the speed with which accusations of dishonesty and disingenuousness pop up whenever people hear something that perhaps they don't like the sound of.